close your eyes. And let's drift back to the deep, open waters of a warm tropical sea. As the world quiets down, imagine floating weightlessly in the dark blue depths, where the only illumination is a faint, pulsing glow. Something tiny swims past, a transparent, jelly-like dome with delicate trailing filaments. It drifts silently. Then, something extraordinary happens. The creature begins to shrink, morph, and revert. It's not dying, it's starting over. You're watching Turritopsis dohrnii, the immortal jellyfish, perform its vanishing act against time. Tonight, let's wander through biology's strangest miracles, softly, slowly. Hey guys, tonight we dive into creatures that shouldn't exist, cells that refuse to die, and microbes that bend the rules of life itself. Turn down the lights, and let me tell you about an animal that may never die. Relax your mind as we explore together how one small jellyfish threw a wrench in our entire concept of aging. Once, long ago, in a world of drifting plankton and silent tides, let me read you a forgotten tale of eternal youth. So here's the weird part. This jellyfish doesn't just live a long time. It goes backward. When stressed, injured, or old, it reverts to its polyp stage. It's like you getting hit by a car, and instead of healing, becoming a baby. And if things get really bad, it becomes an even earlier version of itself. Just a speck, clinging to a rock, waiting for better days. No heart, no brain, no problem. You, meanwhile, are lying there aging minute by minute. Unfair, right? Mainstream biology says aging is irreversible. DNA degrades, cells mutate, entropy does its thing. But this jellyfish sidesteps all that by restarting its life cycle, again and again and again. It's like using a biological save game button. Scientists still argue whether Turritopsis can truly live forever in the wild. After all, predators, disease, and pollution still exist. But in the lab, some specimens have rebooted themselves over a dozen times without any signs of slowing down. That's not just longevity. That's biological time travel. And guess what? It's not even that rare. These little creatures are showing up in oceans all over the world, possibly hitching rides in ballast water or currents, which means somewhere, right now, in the dark water below a fishing trawler, an immortal jellyfish is shrugging off death once again. So how does it work? The technical term is transdifferentiation. Its cells essentially despecialize. Muscle cells become stem cells again. Stem cells turn into nerve cells, and so on. It's like hiring your old high school math teacher to become your barista, dentist, and airline pilot. Weirdly effective. Now the real kicker? If scientists can crack the genetic blueprint behind this, it might change how we think about healing, or aging, or even cancer. Because get this, some researchers think aging is less of a countdown and more of a messy program. One that maybe, just maybe, can be rewritten. Quirky side note. Turritopsis are absurdly small. You could fit a few on your fingernail and still have room for a sprinkle of glitter. They don't look like the Grim Reaper's nemesis. They look like a fragile bubble from a kid's wand. You've probably never heard of them. But if we ever discover how to reboot human cells the same way, this jellyfish may end up on our coins. Now I know what you're thinking. Why not harvest their DNA and inject it into our morning coffee? Well, it's complicated. Human biology doesn't work the same way. Our cells have more rigid roles, more complex structures, but that hasn't stopped some labs from trying to mimic parts of the process. Still, the questions remain. Is this evolution's ultimate loophole, a fluke, or proof that nature sometimes has cheat codes? Some scientists argue we're nowhere near understanding the full implications. Others think it's just a freak show, cool but irrelevant to mammals like us. But the idea, it lingers. Because somewhere out there, in a warm reef current, a jellyfish that should have died years ago is instead starting over, as fresh as day one. But before we drift further into the rabbit hole, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where in the world you're falling asleep from. You hover now over the forest floor, not your typical woodland, but a humid, equatorial jungle. The air is still, heavy with the scent of moss and mulch. Ants scurry along a branch, unaware that something ancient, something fungal, is about to rewrite their fate. You pick out one ant among the hundreds. It pauses mid-step, jerks to the left, climbs, strangely, away from the scent trail. No ant should do this. Something has taken the wheel. You've just met a zombie ant, and it's not fiction. It's Cordyceps unilateralis, the fungus that hijacks insect behavior in a way that would make a horror director proud. Here's how it goes down. A spore lands on an ant. Nothing dramatic at first, just a clingy little cell. But once attached, the fungus invades the body, slowly growing its network through the ant's muscles. Not the brain, never the brain. That's too messy. Instead, it pulls the strings from the body, like a puppeteer controlling a marionette from the elbows and knees. Mainstream scientists have long marveled at this precision. The ant climbs upward, always upward, to a height ideal for fungal growth. Then it clamps its mandibles around a leaf's underside in what researchers call a death grip. The fungus forces this final act. Then begins its real performance. From the ant's head bursts a spindly stalk, a fruiting body, like a tiny, grotesque flagpole waving spores over the forest floor. It's called a stroma. But you might just think, alien. Those spores rain down onto the ants below, starting the cycle all over again. Ants turned into unwitting delivery drones. Now here's the extra creepy twist. Ants in the colony know something's wrong. They've evolved countermeasures. Infected ants are dragged out and dumped far from home. Some colonies even have specialized workers whose job is basically ant quarantine. The fringe theory that the fungus doesn't just infect ants, that maybe it can influence other insects or even higher animals. There's no proof yet, but the way Toxoplasma gondii messes with mice and humans, we'll get to that later. Well, let's just say nature is way more subtle than we give it credit for. Scientists still argue whether the ant is fully in control during its final moments. Some say it has no awareness at all. Others believe there's a window, just a sliver, where the ant realizes it's climbing to its doom but can't stop. And that's where your spine tingles a little, doesn't it? Because in that moment, is the ant still alive, or has it become something else entirely? Quirky fact for your dreams tonight. The fungal stalk is so sensitive to environmental conditions, it sometimes aborts mid-growth if the weather isn't right. Imagine being that picky about your evil parasite garden. Oh, and Cordyceps isn't alone. There are hundreds of zombie fungi, each tailored to a different insect. One for beetles, one for flies, one for caterpillars. It's like the streaming service of doom. Everyone has their own channel. The idea that fungi evolved these specific behavioral hacks Wild. You'd think this was some niche glitch in evolution. But no, this is fine-tuned biological software, written in code more ancient than bones. Some mycologists, fungus scientists, which sounds way cooler now, doesn't it, are even trying to extract compounds from zombie fungi to study their neurological precision. Because if a mushroom can control an insect's body without touching the brain, what else might be possible? Of course, if you're lying there wondering, can this happen to humans? Relax. You're not an ant. At least not yet. Still, if you find yourself craving a walk up a tree in the middle of the night, maybe stay inside. You're deeper now. Not in a forest, not in a lab. This time, the ocean surrounds you. Cold, pressurized, and alien. Darkness presses from all sides, except for the occasional flicker of bioluminescent blips drifting through the void like underwater fireflies. Then, something glides into view. Tentacles ripple like silk in zero gravity. Eyes, huge, unblinking, scan their surroundings with eerie intelligence. The creature pauses, sensing you. Not with sight, not with sound, with something else entirely. You're looking into the eyes of an octopus. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a little voice says, this thing might not be from around here. That's not just your imagination. There's a running theory, half joking, half serious, that octopuses are so weird, so biologically absurd, they might as well be aliens. Let's take inventory. 3 hearts, blue blood, tentacles with taste receptors, a brain that isn't centralized. In fact, more than half of its neurons are in its arms. One limb could learn to solve a puzzle while the rest of the body naps. And don't even get started on camouflage. This isn't just color shifting like a chameleon. Octopuses can change their entire texture and pattern in milliseconds. Sand, coral, kelp, they become it. No practice needed. Mainstream marine biologists have called them shape-shifting geniuses, and they're not exaggerating. These animals open jars, steal fish from other tanks, and escape aquariums through ventilation systems. One famously slipped out of its enclosure, slithered across the floor, climbed into a neighboring tank, ate the fish, and returned, leaving zookeepers puzzled until they checked the security footage. That's not instinct. That's mischief. Now, here's where things get fringe. When scientists sequenced the octopus genome, they found something unexpected. Its DNA contains hundreds of completely unique protein-coding genes. Genes not found in any other known animal. That caused a bit of a stir. One 2018 paper even flirted with the idea that octopuses might be the result of an extraterrestrial origin. Perhaps from cryopreserved eggs delivered by icy comets during the Cambrian explosion. Is that likely? No. But did it get peer-reviewed and published in a legit journal? Yes. That's how hard it is to explain octopuses using Earth logic. Scientists still argue whether the octopus's intelligence is comparable to primates or in a class of its own. We don't really know because it evolved completely separately from mammals, a totally different branch on the tree of life. It's like evolution tried intelligence twice and got 2 wildly different answers. And here's a quirky morsel. Octopuses have been seen playing with toys, not just interacting with objects, but repeating behaviors with no clear goal, just curiosity. That's rare in animals without spines. It's like giving a squid a fidget spinner and finding out it prefers chess. Oh, and get this. When threatened, some octopuses use coconut shells as portable armor. They'll carry them across the sea floor, Assemble a little dome when the danger's near, then dismantle it again to move on. That's not just tool use, that's preemptive tool use. Imagine lugging your living room furniture through a field just in case you need to redecorate in a hurry. There's even evidence that different species of octopus exhibit distinct personalities. Some are bold, others shy. Some aggressive, others passive. That level of individuality in an invertebrate, practically unheard of. Now, what do we do with that? Do we treat them like animals, aliens, wet philosophers? The truth is, we don't know. They live short lives, just a couple years usually, and yet they pack those years with puzzles, escapes, and quiet, lonely brilliance. Maybe they're not aliens in the literal sense, but in the world of biology, they are unquestionably other. So next time you see a video of one untying a childproof cap or solving a maze faster than a rat, just remember, those 8 arms aren't the weird part. The weird part is that we still don't know how they think or what they're thinking about when they look at us. Now let's scurry away from the sea and onto sun-baked rocks, where dry heat ripples across the ground and lizards dart in and out of shadows like living flickers. You spot one now, slender, scaled, with a confident strut that says, "I don't need no man." And she's right, because this lizard doesn't need a partner, not a mate, not even a romantic glance across the desert. She's got parthenogenesis, nature's solo mode. In other words, she reproduces without males at all. Let me introduce you to the whiptail lizard. All female colonies of these ladies live across the southwestern United States and parts of Central America. No dudes, no dates, just pure reproductive independence. Every single lizard you see is a clone of her mother, and her grandmother, and so on. It's like a sorority that's been running the same genetic playlist for generations. Mainstream biology has marveled at this feat for decades. After all, sexual reproduction is messy, risky, and energy-intensive, but it helps mix genes and keep populations resilient. Parthenogenesis, on the other hand, skips the genetic shuffle. It's efficient, sure, but it's also fragile, which is why scientists still argue whether this is a long-term survival strategy or an evolutionary shortcut with an expiration date. What's especially quirky is that these female lizards still go through the motions of mating. Kind of. Some will mount each other during ovulation, mimicking traditional courtship behavior. This seems to stimulate ovulation and boost egg production, even though there's no sperm involved. You heard that right. They fake their own mating ritual. Nature's ultimate improv. And the weirdest part? Their origin story. Many parthenogenetic whiptail species are actually hybrids, descendants of 2 different lizard species that interbred. The hybrid offspring couldn't produce sperm, but they could duplicate their chromosomes and make eggs. Double the DNA, double the weird. Now here's where things get spicy in a very PG-13 kind of way. Despite being all clones, some whiptail lizards exhibit different personalities. Some are bolder, others more timid. Some are bossy, others chill. How does that happen if they all have the same genes? Well, scientists are still debating that too. Some think environmental triggers or epigenetic changes, like little chemical bookmarks on their DNA, might affect their behavior. Others think it's just good old lizard drama. Meanwhile, back in the human world, researchers are intrigued. Parthenogenesis has been seen in sharks, Komodo dragons, even birds, though rarely. But in whiptail lizards, it's the norm, the standard, the default setting. If humans had this option, Let's be honest, Tinder would go out of business overnight. Of course, cloning yourself isn't without trade-offs. It reduces genetic diversity, making the population vulnerable to disease or environmental shifts. One bad virus could wipe out the whole gang. But these lizards seem to be doing just fine, darting through canyons, catching insects, laying egg after egg after egg. A quiet, scaled rebellion against the rules of reproduction. So next time you see a lizard sunbathing on a rock, just know, she might be a one-woman dynasty. Now picture yourself barefoot in a damp forest, the kind where the air smells like wet bark and something ancient lives just beneath the soil. Twilight filters through the canopy. You glance down, and your eyes widen. The ground is glowing, not in a sci-fi alien landing pad way, but with a soft, natural bioluminescence. Like the earth is breathing light. You're witnessing foxfire, a phenomenon where certain fungi glow faintly in the dark. It's real, it's weird, and nobody's entirely sure why it happens. The glow comes from fungi like Armillaria and Mycena species. They emit a faint greenish-blue shimmer from their mycelium, the root-like threads under decaying logs and leaf litter. If you've ever read stories about fairy rings or magical groves, this is probably what inspired them. Mainstream biology says this light is caused by a chemical reaction, luciferase enzymes acting on luciferins in the presence of oxygen. Same general principle as fireflies. But the purpose? Scientists still argue whether the glow is to attract insects to spread spores, or just a chemical quirk with no evolutionary benefit at all. Some fringe theorists even suggest that early human stories of ghost lights, will-o'-the-wisps, and enchanted woods may have come from unexplainable forest glows. Imagine being a Bronze Age traveler, seeing the forest floor light up without warning. You'd think the gods were whispering. And here's a quirky little fun fact. Some glowing mushrooms are being studied for use in low-energy lighting and even bioart. Yes, there are artists and scientists trying to make lamps out of fungus. Picture that in your bedroom, a glowing mushroom nightlight that grows and feeds itself. If that's not peak cottagecore, I don't know what is. Now, here's where it gets real trippy. These bioluminescent fungi are often part of vast underground networks. And I do mean vast. One colony of Armillaria ostoi in Oregon is estimated to be over 2,000 years old and spans nearly 4 square miles. That's not a forest resident. That's a forest landlord. Some researchers call these networks the Wood Wide Web, a fungal lattice that connects tree roots across entire ecosystems. Trees may use it to exchange nutrients, warn each other about drought, or even sabotage competing plants. And glowing fungi are sometimes woven into this web, like neon signs on invisible highways. Now you might be asking, why don't we see glowing forests more often? Good question, sleepy explorer. Turns out, most of these fungi are pretty shy with their glow. The light is often too faint for the human eye unless you let your vision adjust for several minutes in total darkness. And even then, you might need just the right humidity, the right decaying wood, and a bit of patience. But when it works, it's like the earth is quietly humming to itself, a soft emerald whisper from the dirt. Some researchers are trying to boost this glow through genetic editing, combining mushroom genes with those of houseplants or trees to make bioluminescent gardens. Imagine strolling through a glowing park at midnight, no street lamps needed. It's part science, part dream, part quiet rebellion against the fluorescent horror of office lighting. So next time you see a rotting log, don't recoil. Crouch down. Wait. Let your eyes adjust. You might catch a glimpse of the forest's hidden glow and feel for just a second like the mushrooms are looking back. The forest darkens now, cooler and quieter. You've wandered uphill into alpine meadows, where fog curls between trees like lazy smoke and dew hangs heavy on each leaf. And from behind a jagged stone, something stares back. It's not a wolf, not a vampire. But you do see fangs. Meet the musk deer, a shy, awkward little creature with the body of a dainty woodland sprite and the teeth of a rejected horror movie audition. Unlike the typical Disney-fi deer, musk deer males grow long, curved, saber-like tusks instead of antlers. These ivory daggers can grow 2 to 4 inches long, hanging from their upper jaw like they're late for a twilight casting call. Mainstream zoologists explain that these fangs are used not for feeding, but for fighting, specifically sparring with rival males during mating season. No headbutting here, just silent fang duels in misty forests. Very classy, but why fangs in the first place? Scientists still argue whether these tusks evolved solely for combat, or if there's also a display component, like, "Hey ladies, check out these dentist-defying canines." And the mystery deepens. Musk deer are notoriously elusive. They're so hard to spot in the wild that some biologists go decades without a single confirmed sighting. They live in remote, mountainous regions across Central and South Asia, often above 10,000 feet, where the air is thin and the internet non-existent. You could spend a week hiking in their territory and never realize one was watching you the whole time. Here's a quirky twist. Musk deer got their name from the fragrant secretion produced by a gland near the male's abdomen. This musk was once worth more than gold and used in perfumes, incense, and traditional medicines. Yes, ancient royalty used deer belly goo to smell better, and we judged skunks. In fact, musk was so valuable that these creatures were nearly hunted into oblivion. For a while, it was more profitable to find a musk deer than to strike oil. Thankfully, synthetic musk has replaced most of the demand today, but poaching still looms like a shadow. And no, despite their appearance, they aren't related to vampires, or pigs, or even normal deer, really. Musk deer belong to a separate family called Moschidae, a little evolutionary offshoot just doing its weird little thing. In some species, both sexes have small tusks, but in most, it's just the males, and they don't use them to eat meat. They're still vegetarians, fangs and all, chewing leaves like deranged salad eaters. Just imagine you're hiking through dense fog, and suddenly this tiny, wide-eyed creature peeks at you, bearing those tusks like an overconfident anime villain. Then it darts off without a sound. That's a musk deer moment. Confusing, beautiful, and slightly unsettling. There's something poetic about them, really. A creature so gentle in habit, so deadly in appearance. A woodland contradiction. They've become symbols in local folklore. Guardians of the mist, harbingers of strange omens. In some Himalayan villages, sightings of musk deer are seen as signs of luck or warnings. Are they magical? No. Are they misunderstood? Deeply. Some conservationists are trying to raise awareness, but it's hard to protect what people barely know exists. It's like trying to save a ghost with fangs. So the next time you think deer are boring grass eaters, remember this elusive little dagger-mouthed mammal skulking through mountain shadows. He's not trying to scare you. He just wants a quiet life, a patch of moss, and maybe a polite duel now and then. And maybe, just maybe, he's watching you right now from behind a rock, wondering why you have such weird teeth. Now descend into the still waters of a slow-moving river, where the light shifts from golden to green. The current tugs gently at your ankles, and a strange creature hovers nearby, like a drowned salamander that refused to rot. Its limbs float lazily, its head tilts as if deep in thought, and its wide grin never changes. Meet the axolotl, nature's most polite little Frankenstein. This salamander-like creature lives almost exclusively in the ancient lake systems around Mexico City. And while it may look like a weird cousin of a mudkip, it holds one of the most jaw-dropping abilities in the entire animal kingdom: full body regeneration. Cut off a limb, it grows back. Remove its tail, returns like nothing happened. Spinal cord damage, no problem. Even chunks of the heart and parts of the brain can regenerate without scarring. It's like their entire body is in a constant state of, oops, let me fix that. Mainstream biology has confirmed that axolotls don't just heal, they rebuild pixel by pixel. Muscles, blood vessels, nerves, even bone structures. And the best part? They do it perfectly, without scar tissue. It's like Control+Z, but in real life. Scientists are obsessed. For decades, axolotls have been the lab darlings of regenerative medicine. We've been poking and prodding them in the name of science, trying to decode their secret recipe. Why? Because if we could replicate this ability in humans, amputations, spinal injuries, even strokes might look very different in the future. But of course, scientists still argue whether what works in axolotls could ever be transferred to humans. We share some regenerative mechanisms like liver tissue repair, but nowhere near the same scale or elegance. So what's their secret? It seems to come down to stem cells. When injured, axolotls create a special clump of cells called a blastema, a kind of biological soup that reforms into whatever's needed. Toes, skin, cartilage, just pick from the menu. And they don't lose this ability with age. Human children heal faster than adults, but axolotls, they stay regenerative forever, Peter Pan style. They just never get the memo to stop being amazing. Oh, and here's a quirky detail. Axolotls almost never grow up. Seriously, they're what's called neotenic, meaning they retain their juvenile features throughout their entire lives, those feathery gills, that goofy smile, and their fully aquatic lifestyle. Other salamanders would metamorphose and move onto land, but axolotls said, nah, I'm good here in the kiddie pool. It's as if they looked at puberty and politely declined. Scientists can induce metamorphosis in a lab, give them certain hormones, and they'll transform into land-dwelling adult salamanders. But it's risky, and most axolotls in captivity are kept in their youthful aquatic form forever. Now for a sadder twist. In the wild, axolotls are critically endangered. Urbanization, pollution, and invasive species have shrunk their habitat to almost nothing. Most of the axolotls alive today are in labs or aquariums, tiny genetic treasures floating in glass boxes. Still, the dream persists. Could we one day unlock regeneration in humans the way axolotls do it naturally? Some labs are trying. There's research into injecting human limbs with axolotl-derived proteins. Others are studying how to reprogram adult cells into blastema-like states. It's all very sci-fi and very slow, but the promise lingers. And so does the axolotl, smiling, paddling gently in its tank, blissfully unaware that it might hold the key to curing paralysis. So next time you see a cartoon axolotl plushie with big round eyes, remember, under that adorable face is one of the greatest mysteries in biology. And if you ever lose a limb in the future and grow it back, you'll have this goofy little amphibian to thank. Now let's take a turn into the shadowy corners of the mind, both animal and human, where parasites blur the line between biology and behavior. You're not in a jungle or a tide pool anymore. You're in a brain. Not your brain, thankfully. At least, we think so. We're talking about Toxoplasma gondii, a tiny single-celled parasite with a life cycle that makes horror movies look tame. It's one of the most common parasites in the world, infecting about 1/3 of the global human population. And it's a master manipulator. But it starts small. Typically, a cat poops it out. That's right. Cats are the only animals in which toxo can reproduce sexually. Everyone else, just pit stops. But if the parasite ends up in, say, a mouse, it doesn't just hang around. It rewires the mouse's brain. Mainstream studies have shown that infected mice stop fearing the scent of cat urine. In fact, they may even be attracted to it. This suicidal behavior delivers the mouse back to the cat's dinner plate, completing toxo's life cycle like some twisted GPS. That's right. This microscopic organism is effectively mind-controlling its host into dying for its reproductive needs. Scientists still argue whether this behavioral manipulation is deliberate or just a strange side effect. Either way, it works with eerie precision. Now here's the creepy part. Humans can get infected too, usually through undercooked meat, contaminated water, or, cleaning out a litter box. In humans, the parasite often goes dormant in cysts, settling quietly into brain and muscle tissue. Most people feel nothing, especially if they have a healthy immune system. But researchers have noticed strange correlations between infection and subtle behavioral changes. Some studies suggest that infected individuals show higher levels of risk-taking, slower reaction times, and even increased chances of traffic accidents. Others have linked toxo to psychiatric conditions like schizophrenia, although that remains heavily debated. Still, the idea that a parasite could be whispering in your subconscious, even in small, invisible ways, is enough to make you rethink every impulsive decision you've ever made. Now for a truly quirky twist. One team of scientists found that infected rats produced more testosterone. That's right. Toxo may be messing with hormones too, making rodents, and possibly humans, a little bolder, a little riskier, and maybe even a little sexier. Or so the parasite would have you believe. There's also a fringe theory that toxoplasma could have cultural effects, that in regions with higher infection rates, populations might lean slightly more towards certain collective behaviors, like impulsivity or fatalism. It's controversial, possibly nonsense, but interesting nonsense. And toxo isn't alone. Other parasites have similar mind-bending talents. Some flatworms cause snails to climb into sunlight to be eaten by birds. Others make crickets leap into water to drown, so their aquatic offspring can swim free. The animal kingdom is crawling, literally, with things that hijack free will. But toxoplasma, it's special, because it lives among us, quiet, tiny, unseen, and possibly nudging you toward your next bad idea. Should you worry? Probably not. Unless you're a mouse, or you like rare steak and forget to wash your hands. But it does make you wonder how much of your behavior is you, and how much might be invisible hitchhikers along for the ride. Sweet dreams. Let's leave the unsettling world of parasites and step gently into a forest where something far older, quieter, and wiser is at work, beneath your feet. The soil here isn't just dirt. It's a web, a living, pulsing network of roots and filaments, whispering secrets between trees. Welcome to the Wood Wide Web. Yes, it's real. And yes, it's every bit as magical as it sounds. At the heart of this network is mycorrhizal fungi, tiny thread-like structures called hyphae that connect with tree roots. They form a symbiotic relationship. The tree shares sugars made from photosynthesis, and the fungi deliver water and minerals from far beyond the tree's own reach. But that's just the start. Mainstream ecologists have discovered that this underground fungal network also acts like a communication system. Trees send chemical signals through these fungal lines, warnings about insect attacks, drought stress, or even nutrient shortages. It's like plant gossip, but rooted in survival. In one famous study, a maple tree being chewed by caterpillars released a warning through the network. Nearby trees, untouched by insects, began ramping up their own chemical defenses, preparing for an attack that hadn't even happened yet. That's not passive biology. That's strategy. Scientists still argue whether this behavior qualifies as intelligence or just complex chemical signaling. But if it walks like a network, talks like a network, the forest, it turns out, is listening. And it gets more poetic. Some older mother trees act like hubs, connecting to dozens of younger saplings. They'll even preferentially send nutrients to their own offspring through these fungal threads. That's right, tree parents feeding their kids, quietly, underground, over decades. Meanwhile, trees of entirely different species can cooperate too. Birch and fir, for example, have been observed trading resources depending on the season, like neighbors loaning each other sugar. You wouldn't think of trees as social organisms, but once you understand the fungal internet beneath them, it's hard to unsee it. Here's your quirky tidbit for the night. Some fungi fluoresce under ultraviolet light. In a lab, scientists have lit up sections of the mycorrhizal network like fiber optic cables. It's not just metaphorically beautiful, it's literally beautiful. And fungi don't just connect plants. Some species are known to manipulate soil chemistry, manage microbe populations, even suppress the growth of selfish plants that don't contribute back to the network. It's as if the forest has a built-in referee. But this underground world is fragile. Clear-cutting a forest doesn't just remove trees. It breaks the communication lines. Pesticides and fertilizers can disrupt fungal communities. And once the network is gone, it takes decades to rebuild, if it ever does. That's why some reforestation efforts are now beginning with fungus, not trees. Planting young trees without re-establishing the fungal web is like handing someone a phone with no signal. There's still so much we don't know. Scientists are exploring how fungal networks affect climate resilience, carbon storage, even the emotional well-being of forests. Yes, emotional well-being for forests, not you. Though a walk in one probably helps both. So next time you hike through a forest, remember, it's not just trees and leaves and birds. Beneath your boots, a silent conversation is happening. Between saplings and elders, between birch and beech, between this generation and the next. And you're just a visitor walking on the wires. Step gently. You stay among the trees a little longer, but now shift your gaze to the smaller residents. An ant crawling over a twig, a beetle pretending to be a bit of bark. And wait, was that a leaf that just moved? It wasn't. It was a bug. And not just any bug. It was a master of mimicry, nature's own sleight-of-hand artist. Welcome to the world of impersonators. This is where evolution goes full Vegas illusionist. In the wild, looking like something else, especially something unappetizing or dangerous, can mean the difference between a long life and becoming bird lunch. Mainstream biology calls this mimicry, an evolutionary strategy where one organism evolves to resemble another for protection. And while most of us know about stick insects and leaf bugs, the real showstoppers are the ones you've probably never heard of. Take the bird-dropping spider, for example. You read that right. It pretends to be bird poop, not a leaf, not a flower. Poop. It even hunches its legs and positions itself just so to resemble a dollop of white and brown guano. Predators overlook it. Prey doesn't suspect it. And somewhere, a spider quietly cackles in success. Then there's the hawk moth caterpillar, which inflates part of its body to mimic the head of a venomous snake, complete with fake eyes and strike-ready pose. Imagine a chubby worm playing pretend as a cobra. It's adorable and mildly terrifying. Some butterflies mimic toxic species even though they're harmless themselves. This is called Batesian mimicry and is kind of like flashing a fake badge. Hey, I'm dangerous, totally, don't eat me. And it works. Birds learn to avoid certain patterns, so all a mimic has to do is copy the look. But not everyone plays pretend just to avoid being eaten. Some do it to sneak up on others. Aggressive mimicry is when a predator pretends to be something harmless to get close to its prey. Take the blennyfish, for example. Some species mimic the cleaner wrasse, a helpful fish that nibbles parasites off bigger fish. The blenny swims up, acts helpful, and then takes a bite out of the gill before darting away. Classic bait and switch. Scientists still argue whether some of these mimicry strategies evolve by chance or by pressure from very specific environmental threats. It's one thing to look like a twig, but it's another to evolve the behavior to match. Rocking in the wind, adjusting your posture, even faking the sheen of wetness like fresh dung. Yes, really. And here's your quirky tidbit for tonight. There's a species of orchid that mimics a female wasp in look and scent to trick male wasps into pollinating them. The poor wasps think they're about to have a lovely romantic evening. The flower gets pollinated. The wasp gets confusion and regret. Nature doesn't do shame, but if it did, that wasp would be feeling it. Even humans aren't immune to mimicry. Our own brains have mirror neurons, cells that activate when we observe others' behavior. It's why we yawn when someone else does, or flinch when we see someone stub their toe. We're wired to mirror, to copy, to blend. But in the animal world, mimicry is survival dressed in costume. It's camouflage dialed up to 11. It's the art of becoming something you're not, until you are. So next time you see something ordinary in the woods, a twig, a leaf, a smear on a rock, take a second look. It might be watching you back, quietly waiting for its cue. And if you ever feel like you're pretending to be something you're not, just remember, in nature, sometimes pretending is the most honest thing you can do. The ground begins to fall away beneath your feet, and you're gliding once more into the deep sea, past layers of dimming blue and into velvet black. Down here, the rules change. Pressure would crush your lungs, light is a rumor, and survival looks weird. You've just crossed into the territory of glowing sharks and volcano dwellers. Let's start with the glow. Some species of shark, like the swell shark and the chain cat shark, are bioluminescent, glowing softly in the dark like aquatic nightlights. They don't glow like lanterns, but rather emit a ghostly green hue visible to other members of their species, and possibly to prey and predators alike. Mainstream marine biology tells us that this glow isn't just for show. It may help them camouflage by matching the faint light from above, a strategy called counter-illumination. Think of it like biological backlighting, reducing their shadow to make them harder to spot from below. It's the ocean's version of stealth mode. But scientists still argue whether this glow also plays a role in communication, mating, or species recognition. After all, many deep-sea species look similar. A bit of bioluminescent flare might be like flashing your ID badge in the dark. Now here comes the quirkier cousin. Sharks that live in underwater volcanoes. Yes, you heard that right. In the waters of the Solomon Islands, a group of scientists exploring the active undersea volcano known as Kavachi stumbled upon something unexpected. Sharks. Living inside the volcanic crater, in water hot enough to cook spaghetti and acidic enough to make your eyes water. These weren't charred shark ghosts either. They were alive, swimming, apparently just vibing inside a place that would kill nearly anything else. How? We don't really know. The prevailing theory is that these sharks are adapted to handle rapid changes in pressure and acidity. They might use microcurrents to avoid the hottest zones, or possess protective mucus that shields them from burns and chemical irritation. But it's all speculation at this point. One fringe theory, that these volcano sharks are evolving in isolation, developing traits we've never seen before, like resilience to toxic environments, or sensory organs uniquely adapted to their fiery habitat. It's not totally nuts. The deep sea is full of creatures that have turned hardship into superpowers. There are worms that eat bones, fish that survive without oxygen, and crabs that feast on sulfur near hydrothermal vents. Why not lava-loving sharks? Now for your quirky fact. The swell shark, one of our bioluminescent friends, gets its name from its party trick. It gulps water, or air if on land, to puff up and deter predators. Think of it as a glowing balloon with teeth. Oh, and some of these glow-in-the-dark sharks have invisible tattoos. Seriously. Under normal light, they look plain, but under blue light, stripes and patterns appear, as if nature was hiding UV ink beneath their skin. So what's the takeaway here? That even sharks, those ancient toothy apex predators, are still evolving, still surprising, still adapting in the strangest of ways. In glowing waters, inside underwater volcanoes, in places where life shouldn't even begin. So next time you think shark and picture a big-jawed menace circling a beach, remember there are species that glow, inflate, and chill out in volcanoes like it's a hot tub. Nature doesn't just break the rules, it writes new ones when you're not looking. You're still underwater, drifting deeper into twilight, but now the currents carry you towards something colder. Ice forming in thin plates on the water's surface. The environment sharpens. The air turns brittle. And you're about to meet a creature that doesn't fear the freeze. In fact, it embraces it. Say hello to the wood frog, Rana sylvatica, an animal that quite literally freezes solid every winter, and then comes back to life in the spring. Yes, solid, like a frogsicle. As temperatures plummet, this little amphibian burrows just beneath the leaf litter and waits. Ice crystals begin to form in its body. The frog's heart stops. Breathing ceases. Its eyes glaze over, skin stiffens, and the body becomes a temporary popsicle, indistinguishable from death. Mainstream biologists were stunned when they first confirmed this wasn't just a deep hibernation. It's full-on suspended animation. Up to 2/3 of the frog's body water can freeze. It even develops ice around its internal organs, ice inside the body cavity. And yet, come springtime, as the sun warms the soil, the frog thaws. Slowly, carefully, like nature running a defrost cycle. The heart begins to beat again. Muscles twitch. Within hours, the frog hops off like nothing happened. Scientists still argue whether this adaptation evolved once or multiple times. Because the wood frog isn't alone, other frogs, turtles, and even some insects have versions of freeze tolerance. But the wood frog is the undisputed champion of icy comebacks. Now, how does it survive what would kill almost any other vertebrate? It's all about chemistry. When the first signs of frost touch its skin, the frog's liver floods the body with glucose, a sugary antifreeze that protects its cells from damage. At the same time, certain proteins help control where and how ice forms, directing it outside the cells so they don't rupture. It's an exquisite balance of freezing just enough to shut down without doing irreversible harm. Kind of like the biological version of hitting the pause button without crashing the system. Here's your quirky tidbit for tonight. Frozen wood frogs can crackle if you gently tap them, like a weird, frog-shaped ice cube. It sounds like something out of a winter fairy tale, but it's real, and researchers have held them in their hands mid-thaw, watching as life slowly flows back in. And guess what? These frogs don't migrate. They don't go deep underground. They stay near the surface, under a light blanket of leaves and snow, enduring temperatures as low as 6 degrees for weeks at a time. You might walk right over one on a winter hike, never realizing a tiny time traveler lies just inches below. Naturally, medical researchers are fascinated. Could this unlock new cryogenic possibilities for humans, emergency trauma care, organ preservation, long-term space travel? There's even talk, whispered in chilly labs, of using frog-inspired techniques to induce short-term suspended animation in humans during surgery or transport. Of course, scientists still don't fully understand the limits of this ability. How many freeze-thaw cycles can a frog survive? What happens if they're frozen too long or too fast? Every question reveals another icy layer. But here's the beauty of it. The wood frog doesn't care about the theories. It just waits, patient, unbothered, and impossibly still, like a biological miracle buried in last year's leaves. And when the sun peeks over the trees, when the frost melts and the streams start to trickle once more, the frog awakens, not reborn, not repaired, just resumed. And off it hops, as if death never quite had the final word. You're in the rainforest now, somewhere damp, vibrant, and alive with chirps and hums you can't quite place. A sudden movement catches your eye near a leaf. It wasn't just the flick of a bug, it was the leaf itself, blinking. No, not a hallucination. A tiny frog stares back at you, its skin so clear you can see its heart beating. This is the glass frog, Hyalinobatrachium, the literal window to the amphibian soul. Unlike other frogs whose camouflage comes from coloring or patterns, glass frogs take it to the next level. Their bellies are translucent, sometimes nearly transparent. You can see their lungs inflate, their digestive tract working, even the tiny, fluttering pulse of their heart. It's like biology through a magnifying glass. Mainstream biology has documented over 150 species of glass frogs, primarily found in Central and South America. But it's not just the clear belly that grabs scientists' attention. It's why they're like this. And guess what? Scientists still argue over the exact evolutionary benefit. Some believe the see-through skin helps them blend into the forest canopy, where light filters through leaves in patches, breaking up outlines and confusing predators. Others think it's a kind of edge diffusion, where the body's soft transparency masks its silhouette, making it look less like a snack to a hungry bird or snake. Whatever the reason, the result is mesmerizing. Lying on a leaf, belly down, these frogs practically vanish. But wait, there's more. Glass frogs are also excellent dads. In many species, it's the male who guards the eggs. He'll perch nearby or even on top of the clutch for days or weeks, fending off predators and fanning the eggs to keep them moist and free from fungal infection. A tiny, ghostly frog, playing helicopter parent in the treetops? Yes, please. Here's your quirky tidbit of the night. Some researchers discovered that male glass frogs actually glow under UV light. The glow isn't visible to the human eye in daylight, but under specific wavelengths, their limbs and bodies emit a soft, greenish-blue shimmer. Scientists don't yet know if this helps with communication, camouflage, or mate attraction, or if it's just a funky side effect of their unique skin. Also, glass frogs aren't all transparency and tenderness. During mating season, males can be fiercely territorial, wrestling rivals in surprisingly intense bouts that involve pushing, grappling, and throwing each other off leaves. Imagine two translucent gummy bears locked in a slow-motion judo match. So elegant, so violent. And don't be fooled by their dainty appearance. These frogs have evolved vocal sacs to call out in the thick, noisy jungle. Their calls are high-pitched and surprisingly loud. Tiny alarm clocks pinging through the leaves, advertising availability and warding off interlopers. Scientists are still trying to understand how their bodies tolerate such exposure. You'd think being see-through would come with a host of vulnerabilities: sunlight, parasites, injuries. But glass frogs seem to thrive in their niche, a living paradox. Fragile and durable, delicate and defiant. Some researchers are even studying their see-through skin as a model for future medical transparency tech. Ways to monitor organ activity without invasive procedures. The idea that a frog might one day inspire heart surgery techniques? Classic biology move. So next time you're in the rainforest, or, more realistically, scrolling through frog videos online, and you see a leaf twitch, take a closer look. There might be a tiny amphibious ghost resting there, invisible to the untrained eye, because in a forest full of color and camouflage, sometimes the most powerful disguise is simply to disappear. You're out of the jungle now and back under the flickering hum of lab lights, sterile countertops, beeping monitors, scientists in gloves and goggles moving with quiet urgency. But the thing they're studying, it doesn't move, doesn't age, doesn't die. It just grows. Meet the Heller cells, taken from a woman named Henrietta Lacks in 1951. Cells that, over 70 years later, are still dividing, still thriving, still alive. This isn't some metaphor for legacy, it's literal. Her cells are immortal. Mainstream biology knows them as the first immortalized human cell line. Before Heller, every cultured human cell would eventually die. That's normal. It's called the Hayflick limit, a built-in expiration date where cells stop dividing. But Henrietta's cancer cells didn't get that memo. They bypassed that limit, continuing to replicate over and over in petri dishes, defying the rules that govern most of our biology. They were taken without her knowledge or consent during treatment for cervical cancer at Johns Hopkins Hospital. At the time, there were no legal or ethical guidelines for this kind of research. Henrietta never knew her cells would be shipped to labs around the world, fueling decades of discoveries. Vaccines, cancer treatments, genetics research, even the foundation of space biology. Heller cells have orbited the Earth. That's right. A part of her has been to space more times than most of us have left the country. And yet, scientists still argue about what really makes HeLa cells immortal. Is it a mutation in the telomerase enzyme, which keeps chromosomes from shortening during replication? Is it the hyperactive cancer state giving them infinite momentum? Or something we still don't understand? It's probably all of the above. Here's your quirky fact for the night. HeLa cells are so prolific, they've accidentally contaminated other cell lines. Imagine studying what you think is liver tissue, only to realize, oops, it's HeLa again. They sneak into petri dishes like the prankster of the biology world. In fact, some researchers joke that HeLa isn't just a cell line, it's practically a new species. Genetically mutated, aggressive, and everywhere. A single vial contains billions of cells, enough to stretch across cities. She has quietly become a molecular celebrity, and while they've helped save countless lives, the story behind them is complicated. Henrietta's family didn't find out her cells were being used until years later. They never gave permission. They never received compensation. It sparked massive debates around medical ethics, consent, and who owns the parts of you once they've been removed. Which brings us to a strange truth. Part of a woman, long past, is still alive, still dividing, still being studied. In a way, she's one of the most studied humans in history. Her DNA decoded, her cell behavior mapped, her chromosomes plastered across textbooks. And yet, she never got to speak for herself. Scientists now use the HeLa story as a case study in bioethics. Her name is taught alongside discoveries that her cells made possible. The polio vaccine, chemotherapy protocols, gene mapping, even early COVID research. It's a legacy she never asked for, but one the world can't ignore. So next time you hear about a medical breakthrough, remember, behind every clinical triumph, there's often a very human story. Sometimes astonishing, sometimes unjust, always complex. Henrietta's cells are still out there, under microscopes, in flasks, on slides, dividing, growing, whispering across decades. Not quite alive, not quite gone. You're in a swamp now, lush, buzzing, and somehow a little too quiet. Kneel down beside that patch of green. There it is, the world's most suspicious-looking salad bowl. The Venus flytrap. It doesn't look like much at first. Just a modest cluster of green leaves, each split down the middle like a little open mouth, with tiny spines lining the edges. Cute, right? But this plant isn't here to photosynthesize and chill. It's carnivorous, and it's got rules. The Venus flytrap is one of the few plants that knows when to act. It doesn't just snap shut whenever something touches it. That would waste energy. No, it counts. Mainstream botany has confirmed that the Venus flytrap uses tiny trigger hairs inside its jaws to detect movement. One touch does nothing, but touch two hairs within about 20 seconds. Snap. The plant is counting to 2. That's not a metaphor. That's literal electrochemical counting, an internal timer ticking off action potentials, like a leafy little brain. If the flytrap had fingers, it'd be tapping them while it waits. Scientists still argue whether this qualifies as intelligence or just an elaborate biological reflex. But it's more than a trap. It's a processor. A green, silent gatekeeper that makes decisions. Once the jaws close, if the trapped bug continues to squirm, the plant detects more movement, counting up to 5 or more triggers. That tells it the prey is worth digesting. Then it seals shut, forms a stomach-like chamber, and starts secreting enzymes. In a week or so, it reopens, with a clean plate. And here's a quirky tidbit for the night. Venus flytraps don't just rely on bugs flying in. They actually produce sweet-smelling nectar along the inner surface of their trap to lure insects. They're baiting the bugs. Nature's little con artist. They're also surprisingly picky. Drop a pebble in the trap, it might close, but it won't digest it. The plant can tell there's no squirm, no moisture, no payoff. Like a disappointed chef tossing out a cold appetizer. Now, before you go imagining a monstrous fly trap with teeth and a hunger for humans, rest easy. These plants are small, about the size of a tea saucer. They only eat bugs, and even that takes patience. Still, their electrical behavior fascinates scientists. The electrical impulses they generate are like those in animal nerve cells. They've become a model system for studying plant signaling. And believe it or not, memory. Yes, memory. Some researchers think the flytrap remembers stimuli across short time frames. It's not long-term diary-keeping memory, but it's enough to let it act on information from a moment ago. A sort of vegetal short-term awareness. Let that sink in. A plant that can count. A plant that has short-term memory. A plant that closes its leafy jaws only when the math checks out. And this isn't some tropical oddity. Venus flytraps are native to a very small area in the Carolinas. That's right. One of the weirdest plants on Earth grows quietly in the American Southeast, usually within boggy, acidic soil. Their habitat is shrinking, though. Overcollection and habitat destruction have made wild populations rare. Most flytraps you see in stores are cultivated, little green predators in plastic pots, waiting for a finger to poke them. Which, by the way, don't do. It drains their energy. They'll forgive you, but still. So next time you walk past a bug zapper or swat at a fly, consider the Venus flytrap, patient, precise, and silently running the numbers. Because even in the stillness of the swamp, nature keeps score. You're drifting now into the quiet world of cocoons and silk, where everything slows down, except for one shocking truth. That butterfly, the beautiful flitting symbol of transformation, yeah, it got there by turning into soup. Let's back up. Picture a caterpillar, fuzzy, curious, munching on leaves like a tiny, squishy lawnmower. You watch it for a while, imagining the wings beneath the skin, the secret waiting inside. Then comes the moment. It attaches itself to a twig, curls inward, and forms a chrysalis. Here's what mainstream biology tells us. Inside that shell, the caterpillar begins one of nature's most jaw-dropping processes, complete metamorphosis. It doesn't just grow wings. It doesn't rearrange some body parts. It melts. Enzymes break down its muscles, tissues, and organs into a rich cellular soup. If you cut open the chrysalis at the wrong moment, you'd see goo. Nothing butterfly-shaped. No wings folded neatly inside. Just bug smoothie. And yet, somehow, out of that mess, a butterfly emerges. Scientists still argue how this works so perfectly, every time. Because it's not just breaking down, it's rebuilding. Specialized cells called imaginal discs lie dormant in the caterpillar, almost like seed packets. They survive the liquefaction, then guide the process of reconstruction, forming antennae, legs, wings, eyes. It's like demolishing a house, saving a few blueprints in Tupperware, and building a castle from the rubble. And here's your quirky tidbit. Some studies show that butterflies may retain memories from their caterpillar stage. That's right, something survives the goo. In experiments, caterpillars trained to dislike certain smells still avoided those scents after emerging as butterflies. That would be like remembering a childhood fear of broccoli after dissolving into jello and being reborn. This process, called holometabolism, isn't exclusive to butterflies. Bees, flies, beetles all go through their own version of the soup stage. It's one of evolution's greatest innovations, total reinvention with a side of chaos. But why go through all that? Well, mainstream evolutionary thinking says it helps split the life cycle into two different niches. The caterpillar focuses on eating and growing. The butterfly, reproduction and spreading genes. No competition between life stages, efficient. But scientists still marvel at the sheer complexity of it. How do the cells know what to become? How do they coordinate growth and timing? How does a gut reassemble into a flight system? And what about the emotional side? We love butterflies. They're symbols of hope, beauty, freedom. But inside each one is a history of liquefaction, of total surrender to change. A reminder that transformation, real transformation, isn't always graceful. Sometimes it's gooey, confusing, ugly even. Maybe that's the most comforting part. Maybe the next time your life feels like it's melting into soup, you'll remember the caterpillar, how it dissolved, rebuilt, and flew. Now we're back on land, in a dusty 1940s chicken coop in Colorado. The air is dry, the sun setting behind the barn, and somewhere in the yard, a headless chicken is pecking at the ground. Yes, you read that right. Meet Mike the headless chicken, one of the weirdest, most baffling animals in modern history. He lived, he walked, he clucked, he even tried to preen his feathers, and he had no head. Let's back up. In 1945, a farmer named Lloyd Olson was preparing dinner. He swung the axe and beheaded one of his chickens. But instead of collapsing, the chicken stood up, wobbled a little, then calmly walked away. Mainstream biology says this shouldn't be possible. Chickens, like all vertebrates, need their brain to control basic functions. And yet, Mike lived, not for a few seconds, not even a few minutes. He lived for 18 months. Scientists later concluded that Olson's axe swing had missed the brainstem and the part of the jugular. Enough brain tissue remained at the base of Mike's neck to control vital reflexes, like breathing and walking. He still had most of his cerebellum, the part of the brain that regulates motor function. And yes, he had a very good blood clot. The farmer, both confused and opportunistic, began feeding Mike with an eyedropper, grains, milk, water, straight into the open neck. He used a syringe to clear mucus from the throat hole. People paid to see the miracle bird. He toured the country, made newspaper headlines. And here's your quirky tidbit. Mike gained weight during this time. He thrived. At one point, he weighed more than a normal chicken of his breed. He became a roadside legend, a beakless wonder, a chicken that refused to quit. Scientists still argue just how much consciousness Mike retained. Did he know anything? Was he distressed? Or did he simply function on residual reflex? We'll never know. But Mike's existence forced people to revisit assumptions about brain function and the boundaries between life and death. Eventually, Mike died in a motel in Arizona. The story goes that the family forgot the mucus syringe and couldn't clear his throat in time. Yes, he suffocated from not having a head. There's something darkly poetic about that. And while his story might sound like a fringe urban legend, Mike was very real. He even has a statue in Fruita, Colorado, a proud metal rooster staring into the sky, neck held high. So what does this mean for the rest of us? Maybe it's a cautionary tale, maybe a weird biological footnote, but maybe, just maybe, It's proof that life doesn't always follow the script, that sometimes, even after everything that should end you has happened, you can keep going. Wobbling forward, pecking at the unknown, head or no head. Now lean in a little closer. You're still in the lab, quiet, fluorescent, pulsing with the low hum of machines. But this time, the air feels different. There's a tension here. You're not observing a living creature. You're watching something leave. Rats, strapped with tiny brain monitors, lie motionless. They've just passed away. And yet, there it is, a sudden surge of activity in their brains, a final burst of electricity, like a brain-wide fireworks show going off in the seconds after death. Welcome to one of neuroscience's most debated frontiers, the death spike. Mainstream research has shown that just after cardiac arrest, when the heart stops, when oxygen drops, when everything should go dark, the brain lights up. For 30 seconds, maybe a little more, waves of gamma activity spike across regions tied to consciousness, memory, and perception. It's not a flicker, it's a storm. And scientists still argue what this means. Is it just a glitch? The neurons firing as they die, like sparks from a broken fuse? Or is it something more? Some suggest it could explain near-death experiences, those vivid memories, tunnels of light, life flashbacks, even out-of-body sensations. If the brain suddenly floods itself with activity, could it be replaying everything in fast-forward? The rats certainly don't tell us much, but the patterns recorded in their final moments eerily resemble those associated with heightened conscious awareness. And here's your quirky detail. These post-mortem spikes have been seen not just in rats, but potentially in humans too. In rare cases during monitored hospital deaths, EEGs have caught similar bursts. Not always, but just enough to raise eyebrows. It's like the brain says, hold on, one last thing, before fading into silence. Now, let's be clear. This isn't proof of an afterlife or consciousness lingering after death, but it is a reminder that the brain isn't a light switch. It doesn't just turn off, it winds down, it flickers, it processes. Maybe it even reflects. Some neuroscientists theorize that this final surge could be the result of collapsing inhibitory control, meaning the brain stops filtering information, and everything floods through at once, like a dam breaking. Others think it's more mechanical, just the last gasp of electrical energy cycling out. But here's a quieter possibility. What if the brain, sensing the end, squeezes out every last bit of awareness? One final attempt to make sense of the moment, to gather, to understand. That's speculative, of course, but death is no longer a black box in biology. It's an active area of study. The space between alive and dead might be more of a slow fade than a sharp line. It's even shaping new medical questions. Can consciousness persist during CPR? During brain trauma? Could post-mortem awareness affect how we treat the dying? Nobody knows for sure, but one thing is certain. The brain's final moments are not as quiet as we once thought. So next time you hear someone say they were gone in an instant, just remember, the brain might have a few more things to say before it lets go. Softly, silently, brilliantly. You're not in a lab anymore. You're somewhere warmer, dustier. The air hums with the sound of insects, and everything feels still. Then you see it, a cockroach wandering aimlessly. But something's wrong. Its walk is off, sluggish, controlled. And then, enter the wasp. But not just any wasp. This is Ampulex compressor, better known as the emerald cockroach wasp, shiny, beautiful, and horrifying in the most fascinating way, because she's not here to sting and fly away. She's here to hack a brain. Let's walk through it. First, she ambushes the roach and stings it twice, once in the thorax to paralyze the front legs, then again directly into the brain. This second sting is surgical. She's not just injecting venom. She's disabling the part of the brain that controls self-directed movement. The cockroach can still walk, fly, respond to touch. But it won't. It no longer initiates action. It has become a zombie. Mainstream entomologists describe this as one of the most precise examples of behavioral manipulation in nature. The wasp doesn't kill the cockroach. She takes over. And then, she grabs one of its antennae like a leash and leads it, yes, physically walks it, into a burrow. The roach follows like a sleepwalker. No struggle, no resistance. Once inside, the wasp lays an egg on its abdomen, seals the burrow with debris and leaves. The cockroach remains there, still alive. Days pass. The larva hatches, burrows into the roach, and begins to eat, from the inside out. It consumes the organs in a carefully timed order to keep the host alive as long as possible. Eventually, the larva pupates, bursts free, and the roach dies. Mission complete. Quirky fact: this mind control routine is so precise that scientists have studied the venom's individual compounds to see how they affect neurotransmitters in the cockroach brain. Some are considering it as a model for understanding Parkinson's or motor disorders. Yes, we're learning brain chemistry from zombified bugs. And get this, the wasp's venom seems to block octopamine, a neurotransmitter involved in movement motivation in insects. Basically, the roach still could move. It just doesn't feel the urge, like someone sucked out its free will. Scientists still argue whether the cockroach is aware during all this. Is it suffering, or just blank? There's no way to know for sure, but it's creepy either way. And just to add some drama, this is not unique. Nature has dozens of examples of parasitic mind control. There are fungi that puppet ants, as we've already met. But there are also worms that hijack crickets, viruses that alter the mating calls of cicadas, and bacteria that control snail behavior. Free will, it seems, is negotiable. The emerald cockroach wasp doesn't look like a villain. It's small, metallic, kinda pretty, but it plays one of the most advanced biological tricks we've ever documented, turning a living organism into both nanny and nursery. And the scariest part, it works every time. So next time you see a bug behaving a little strangely, walking in circles, or just pausing mid-step, ask yourself, who's really in control? Let's shake off that mind control energy and head somewhere warmer, quieter, tropical wetlands. A soft breeze rustles the leaves. Everything feels calm. And then you see it, a butterfly, dainty, colorful, fluttering gently down from a low-hanging branch. It lands next to a turtle, not on it, not near it, right next to its eye, and then it starts drinking its tears. This isn't a metaphor, this isn't a myth. This is a very real, very delicate example of what scientists call lacrophagy, literally tear feeding. Mainstream biologists have observed butterflies from species like Dryas iulia and caligo, gently sipping tears from reptiles, birds, and even mammals. And turtles are among their favorite stops. But why? Tears, it turns out, are full of salt, something butterflies and many insects desperately need in environments where sodium is scarce, especially in tropical regions where heavy rainfall can leach salt from the soil. And turtles, They're slow, patient, not likely to swipe you with a paw. Basically, they're mobile salt licks with big, expressive eyes. It sounds bizarre. It looks bizarre. But it's common enough that researchers have filmed entire butterfly clusters politely sipping from a single turtle's eyeball like a floating brunch buffet. Scientists still argue how this relationship works. Is it mutualism? The turtles don't seem to benefit. Is it parasitic? The butterflies don't hurt the turtles. It's more like tolerated inconvenience, a mildly annoying spa treatment. Here's your quirky fact. Butterflies don't only drink tears. Some will sip blood, sweat, or even dung. Basically, if there's moisture with minerals, it's on the menu. They're surprisingly versatile diners in their quest for nutrients. And don't be fooled by the delicate wings and soft landing. These butterflies are persistent. They'll return to the same turtle day after day. Some even chase reptiles down to get in position, like tiny, polite paparazzi obsessed with salt. So what's it like for the turtle? Well, it probably doesn't love it. But it doesn't resist either. No flinching, no swiping, just a slow blink, maybe a sigh, and a general sense of, here we go again. And that's what makes this interaction so mesmerizing. Two wildly different creatures, one big, slow, armored, and ancient. The other tiny, flighty, powdered in color. And yet, here they are, sharing a moment, an exchange, a ritual that's probably been happening for millions of years without anyone noticing. There's something strangely poetic about that. The tear-drinking butterfly doesn't sting, doesn't kill, doesn't harm. It waits. It approaches. It takes just enough. And the turtle, it allows it. Maybe that's the lesson here. Not all bizarre biological behaviors are violent or competitive. Some are just weirdly gentle. So the next time you see a butterfly fluttering through the air, remember, it might not be hunting nectar or dancing in sunlight. It might be looking for tears, yours perhaps. Now, imagine drifting through space, not in a spaceship, but as something far tinier, something that shouldn't be alive, yet somehow still is. Meet the tardigrade, also known as the water bear, or my personal favorite, the moss piglet. At first glance, it looks like a wrinkly gummy bear with too many legs. 8, to be exact. Stubby and plodding, with a squishy face that's equal parts adorable and unsettling. It's microscopic, barely 0.5 millimeter long, but don't let the size fool you. This creature is nearly unkillable. Mainstream biology confirms that tardigrades can survive conditions that would obliterate just about anything else. You can freeze them to near absolute zero, boil them, blast them with radiation, dry them out completely, even launch them into the vacuum of space. And they just shrug, take a nap, and keep going. Their secret? A process called cryptobiosis, a state where they shut everything down. No metabolism, no movement. They curl into a dry little pellet called a ton, sealing themselves off from the horrors of the outside world. They can stay like that for decades. Then, with just a drop of water, they rehydrate, stretch, and walk away like nothing happened. Imagine dying, hitting pause, and pressing play 30 years later, with zero memory loss and full mobility. Scientists still argue how they manage to avoid cellular damage during this process. One theory points to a special sugar called trehalose, which stabilizes their proteins during desiccation. Another theory highlights a protein unique to tardigrades that literally shields their DNA from radiation. Some researchers think these abilities could eventually be used to preserve vaccines without refrigeration, protect crops during drought, or even store human cells long-term for space travel. And yes, tardigrades have already been to space. In 2007, a European mission launched a group of them into orbit, exposed them to cosmic radiation and the vacuum of space, and they lived. Some even reproduced later. That's right. They went to space and came back fine. They didn't even post about it. Here's your quirky tidbit. Tardigrades have also been found on mountaintops, ocean floors, tropical forests, and your neighborhood sidewalk. They live in moss, lichens, and even house dust. Chances are, there's one near you right now, just minding its own business in a puddle. And yet, despite all this toughness, tardigrades are delicate in a strange way. In their active state, they're vulnerable, squishable, soft. It's only when things get dire that they armor up and become the Superman of the microbial world. Kind of like us, really. We're at our most resilient when pushed, when we have no choice but to adapt. Some scientists have even pondered whether tardigrades might survive a global extinction event. Asteroid hits, solar flares, planet-wide disasters. They've modeled scenarios. And guess what? These little squishers often come out on top. Which begs the question, if life started over, would tardigrades still be here? Probably, floating through space debris, curled into a pellet, waiting for the next drop of water and a fresh start. So if you ever feel small, or vulnerable, or totally unqualified to handle the chaos of existence, just remember the tardigrade. Tiny, wrinkly, indestructible, floating through life with stubby confidence and zero concern for your expectations. The sun sets deeper now, and you're drifting into the blackest parts of the ocean, far below the light, where creatures evolve in whispers and shadows. Down here, survival isn't just about hiding, it's about confusion, diversion, distraction through absurdity. You catch a flash in the gloom, a strange movement, something glowing? Yes, it's a fish, but not just any fish. Its butt is glowing. Welcome to the strange, flickering world of bioluminescent rear ends. Meet the photoblephare, Ron palpebratum, also known lovingly as the flashlight fish. These guys are equipped with light organs under their eyes, and while they're the poster fish for glow tactics, they're not alone. Several deep-sea species have evolved glow-emitting organs on their tails, fins, and yes, even around the anus. Why? Because when you're a slow, delicious fish in a dark, dangerous sea, you need every trick you can muster. And if that means confusing predators by making your rear end look like your face, or making your tail blink like bait, well, you do what you gotta do. Mainstream marine biology explains that these glowing regions are usually populated by symbiotic bacteria. The fish don't create the light themselves. They host tiny microbes that do it for them. The bacteria get a safe home. The fish get a living flashlight. And in some cases, the glow is used to attract prey. In others, it's misdirection. One fringe theory holds that some of these fish actually flash their butt light when pursued, drawing attention away from their head and confusing predators into striking the wrong end. It's like leaving a glowing decoy behind while you make your escape. Imagine tossing a glow stick over your shoulder during a chase scene. That's the energy here. And it works. Scientists still argue exactly how effective these lights are in the chaos of deep-sea movement, but it's clear the fish have adapted them into an art form. Some species can blink the lights on and off at will, using a thin flap of skin like an eyelid. That's right, butt winks from a certain perspective. Here's your quirky tidbit. In captivity, Some flashlight fish have been observed using their lights to communicate with one another. Rapid blinking seems to correlate with stress, attraction, or territory warnings. So yes, these fish might be throwing tail light signals in a language we still don't understand. And humans. Naturally, we're fascinated. Engineers are studying bioluminescent bacteria to develop living sensors, low-energy displays, and glowing biopaints. It's a field where marine weirdness could shape tomorrow's tech. But deep in the wild, far below the waves, the bioluminescent butt remains unbothered, glowing gently, confusing predators, attracting mates, getting absolutely no appreciation from the science museums, which continue to glorify flashy tentacles and lanternfish jaws. It's time we honored the unsung heroes of distraction, because if you can't be fast, or fierce, or armored, sometimes it pays to just flash your butt and hope for the best. Now we're drifting toward the edge of the reef, where the water's clear, the light dapples, and the silence stretches deep. A graceful figure glides past you, elegant, powerful, mysterious. It's a shark. But wait, where's the mate? There isn't one. This shark just had a baby, by herself. Welcome to the wild and rarely observed world of parthenogenesis, a form of asexual reproduction in which an animal gives birth without fertilization. And yes, sharks can do it. Mainstream zoology long assumed this was impossible for vertebrates. It was textbook, male and female, egg and sperm, like clockwork. But in the last 2 decades, researchers have observed parthenogenesis in several shark species, including bonnetheads, blacktip sharks, zebra sharks, and bamboo sharks. Here's how it works. In certain conditions, usually when no male is present, the female's egg fuses with a polar body, a byproduct of egg production that's genetically similar to a sperm cell. The result is an embryo that develops without outside genetic input. That's not cloning exactly. The offspring has half the genetic diversity it would with a father. But it's still a new life. From one parent. No assistance required. And here's your quirky tidbit. One female zebra shark in an Australian aquarium switched from sexual to asexual reproduction after being separated from her mate for a few years. Her eggs suddenly began hatching. Scientists were stunned. She had, quite literally, decided to go solo. Parthenogenesis isn't exclusive to sharks. It's also been observed in snakes, turkeys, lizards, and even Komodo dragons. But sharks doing it, that's next level cool. Why? Because sharks are ancient. Their reproductive systems are complex. And parthenogenesis wasn't just a fluke. It's happened multiple times, in multiple species, often under controlled conditions. Scientists still argue what evolutionary purpose it serves. Is it a last resort survival tactic? A way to keep the gene pool moving in the absence of males? Or simply a biological throwback to ancestral traits shared with simpler organisms? Whatever the case, it's rare, and it raises deep questions about what defines reproduction. Think about it. These are creatures designed for strength, speed, and genetic mixing. And yet, when left alone, they still find a way to bring life into the world. And the babies, they survive, they grow, some even thrive. But there's a catch. Because parthenogenetic offspring inherit only the mother's DNA, they lack genetic variation, meaning they may be more vulnerable to disease or environmental change. In nature, it's a risky strategy, a roll of the dice. Still, it's one heck of a plan B. So next time you see a shark gliding through an aquarium tank, cruising cool and alone, you might wonder, is she carrying life within her? And if so, is she doing it entirely by herself? Because in a world where survival demands creativity, the ocean always finds a way. Even if that means going full girl boss, no sperm required. You're back on land now, in a damp, leafy jungle where things squish underfoot and the air smells like something halfway between mushrooms and trouble. Something slides across a fern. You freeze, because what you're watching is less of a love story and more of a biological duel. Welcome to the bizarre reproductive world of flatworms, where mating is equal parts intimacy and combat. Specifically, this, penis fencing. Yes, that's the scientific term. Flatworms, particularly the hermaphroditic kind, possess both male and female reproductive organs. But here's the twist. Neither worm wants to be the mother. Why? Because producing eggs and carrying embryos takes more energy. It's costly. So instead of agreeing on roles, they sword fight with their penises. Two wriggling, translucent noodles, flailing and stabbing at each other like slimy Jedi. The winner manages to inject sperm into the loser, who then has to take on the maternal role. No courtship, no dinner first. Just a wild fencing match and some existential regret. Mainstream biology views this as a surprisingly efficient, if mildly horrifying, way to settle reproductive roles. But the implications are even weirder. Some species can absorb DNA from multiple mates, blending genetic material into a strange soup of fatherhood. Others simply split themselves and regenerate, because yes, many flatworms can regrow entire body parts, even halves of themselves. Which means some flatworms technically reproduce by stabbing, absorbing, splitting, and regenerating. Shakespeare would not know what to do with this. Scientists still argue whether this fencing behavior evolved purely from reproductive stress, or if it also plays a role in selecting fitter partners. Some researchers think the speed and agility of the fighters might actually serve as a form of sexual selection, meaning the better swordsman gets to pass on better genes. And here's your quirky tidbit. In some extreme cases, the fencing matches can go on for hours. It's not quick. It's not graceful. It's an awkward, drawn-out slime duel for parental avoidance. Even stranger, certain flatworms that lose the fencing battle have been observed attempting to re-fence after already being impregnated. Like, okay, fine, but maybe this time I'll win. Some species even perform this ritual in groups, with multiple partners all fencing and swapping DNA in what can only be described as a very confusing garden party. And while this might all sound chaotic and absurd, flatworms are astonishing in other ways too. They're masters of regeneration, some capable of regrowing entire heads with their memories intact. Imagine losing your head and growing it back with your Netflix password still remembered. These creatures challenge what we think we know about sex, identity, and self. Because in their world, gender is fluid, roles are flexible, and parenthood? Well, it's decided by the sharpest jab. So next time you're feeling awkward about a first date, just be grateful you don't have to spar for your right to remain child-free. Somewhere out there, in the undergrowth, two flatworms are fencing in the moonlight. Elegant, slimy, and completely uninterested in your definitions of romance. You're standing now in a quiet greenhouse. It's warm, still, and filled with the gentle rustling of leaves. But something's different about this place. It doesn't just smell alive. It feels aware. Because tonight, the plants are listening. And not just passively. They're counting, remembering, reacting. Let's talk about plant memory. a concept once laughed off, now taken increasingly seriously by botanists, biophysicists, and everyone who's ever felt like their houseplant was judging them. One of the best-known examples, the Mimosa pudica, or sensitive plant. Its leaves fold up instantly when touched, a defense against herbivores and overly curious humans. But here's the kicker. If you keep poking it, it stops reacting. Why? Because it realizes there's no threat, no damage. And this isn't fatigue. The plant remembers the stimulus and makes a behavioral decision. Even after hours or days, without interaction, it still recalls that the touch wasn't dangerous. Mainstream plant biologists now describe this as a form of habituation, a primitive memory process. No brain, no neurons. Yet somehow the plant tracks time, evaluates risk, and adjusts its response. That's more than a reflex. And mimosa isn't alone. Experiments with pea plants have shown that they can anticipate light. When trained to associate a breeze with a light source, some seedlings actually lean toward the wind before the light even appears. That's a behavior based on memory and expectation. Scientists still argue whether this qualifies as cognition, learning, or just ultra-complex chemical pathways. But the lines are getting blurry. The more we study, the more we realize plants aren't just passively photosynthesizing, they're processing information. Some fringe researchers have even explored whether plant root tips behave like primitive sensory organs. Roots can detect gravity, moisture, and chemical signals. They avoid obstacles. They send alerts to neighboring plants via mycorrhizal networks, those underground fungal threads we visited earlier. It's not nerves and synapses, but it's close. Here's your quirky tidbit. In 2014, a Swiss botanist played Beethoven's symphonies for a group of vines. Not only did they grow faster, they leaned toward the speakers. Another test played recordings of caterpillars chewing, and plants responded by upping their chemical defenses. Yes, they heard the sound of danger. And while there's no evidence plants feel pain or have subjective experience, they're certainly far more active than we used to think. They eavesdrop on each other, warn each other. Some even recognize their relatives and adjust how much they compete for light and nutrients. It's like a quiet, green version of family dinner. And it changes how we think about awareness. Because maybe consciousness isn't a binary switch, on or off. Maybe it's a gradient, a spectrum, with plants existing somewhere along that line, not conscious like you or me, but responsive, reactive, maybe even slightly aware of time and space. So next time you walk through a garden, take a moment. You're not alone. You're surrounded by beings that might just be noticing you, measuring your footsteps, counting the seconds. And if you whisper, maybe, just maybe, they're listening. Let's step away from the greenhouse now and wander toward the coast. Specifically, the shallows where coral crumbles underfoot and seagrass waves lazily in the tide. You crouch near a tide pool peering in, and there it is, a shrimp, brightly colored, tiny, harmless looking, until it punches. Meet the mantis shrimp, an animal that combines rainbow vision with the fastest punch in the animal kingdom. You're about to fall asleep to the tail of a shrimp that can vaporize water with a jab. No, seriously. There are two main types of mantis shrimp, smashers and spearers. Smashers have club-like appendages that they fling with such speed, over 50 mph, that they generate cavitation bubbles. These bubbles momentarily reach temperatures hotter than the surface of the sun, collapsing with a tiny flash of light. Yes, this shrimp punches hard enough to cause a miniature explosion. Mainstream marine biologists have clocked the strike at 10,000 times the force of gravity. That's like you swinging your arm so fast you punch through a wall, a building, and possibly the moon. They use this power to shatter crab shells, crack snail armor, and on occasion, break aquarium glass. Keep your fingers out of the tank. But if the punch isn't enough to stun you, their eyes will. Each mantis shrimp eye moves independently and has 12 to 16 color receptors, compared to our 3, red, green, blue. They can see ultraviolet, infrared, and polarized light. Their vision is so complex, scientists still don't fully understand how their brains process it. In other words, they can see colors that don't even exist for us. And they don't just see light. They detect the orientation of light waves. That's like seeing not just a rainbow, but also the angle at which it's shining. It's been described as hypervision and makes the mantis shrimp one of the most visually gifted animals ever discovered. Scientists still argue why they evolved such complex vision. Is it for spotting prey, mating displays, navigation, or just because they can? It's one of evolution's most luxurious upgrades, and no one really knows what they're doing with it. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some researchers are studying mantis shrimp eyes to inspire camera technology and optical sensors. Their ability to filter light so precisely could improve everything from medical imaging to smartphone screens. So yes, your next iPhone camera might owe its power to a shrimp that lives in a hole and throws fists like a Marvel character. And don't be fooled by the shrimp label. Mantis shrimp aren't actually shrimp. They belong to their own group of crustaceans called stomatopods. They've been around for over 400 million years. That's older than dinosaurs. They're little armored tanks, lightning-fast boxers, color-drunk rainbow warriors hiding in burrows, and they're not afraid of you. So the next time you hear a click underwater, or see a blur vanish beneath a rock, remember, somewhere nearby is a mantis shrimp, watching you in spectral HD, ready to unleash the force of 1,000 suns on the nearest hermit crab. And you, friend, you're just a tourist. We're staying in the air now, barely. Night falls over a dusky canyon, and the sky fills with wings. You hear the high, whispery chirps of echolocation, bouncing invisibly from cliff to cave. Bats, dozens, maybe hundreds. But they're not just flying, they're competing. Because some of these bats, they don't just navigate by sound. They jam each other's sonar like tiny flying hackers. Welcome to the world of echolocation warfare. Mainstream zoologists have long known that bats use echolocation, sending out high-frequency sounds and reading the returning echoes to build a mental map of the world. It's like sonar, only biological. They can track insects mid-flight, dodge branches in total darkness, and even detect the flutter of moth wings. But in recent years, researchers have discovered something sneakier. Some species, like the Mexican free-tailed bat, emit special jamming calls that interfere with other bats' hunting signals. Essentially, they broadcast noise at just the right moment to scramble a rival's echo pattern. It's like yelling la 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 during your friend's game of Marco Polo, but with food on the line. And it works. In experiments, bats exposed to jamming calls miss their targets significantly more often. In the wild, this could mean the difference between a full stomach and a hungry night. Scientists still argue whether this counts as true competition, or if it's just an accidental byproduct of crowded hunting grounds. But the evidence points toward deliberate interference, an acoustic arms race unfolding in the skies every night. And bats aren't just disrupting their rivals. Some have evolved ways to evade jamming by altering the frequency, timing, or pattern of their calls in response. It's like biological signal encryption. One fringe theory even suggests that certain moths evolved their own countermeasures, clicking sounds that jam bat echolocation. So we may be looking at a full-blown sound war, moth versus bat versus bat. It's more Top Gun than National Geographic. Here's your quirky tidbit. Bats' vocalizations can be incredibly complex. Some species have regional dialects, change their tone based on emotion, and even recognize the calls of friends or rivals. One species was caught in a lab using a kind of "get out of my seat" squeak when others encroached on their roosting spot. That's right, bat arguments. In squeaky surround sound. And while bats are often misunderstood, they're crucial for ecosystems. Pollinators, seed dispersers, insect regulators. Without them, we'd have more pests, fewer fruits, and much less nighttime drama. They're also astonishing flyers. Unlike birds, their wings are hands, long, jointed fingers stretched by skin. They can hover, pivot, break, and even fly upside down. So next time you're out at dusk and see something dart overhead, zigzagging like a paper plane in a wind tunnel, pause. You might be witnessing a sonar skirmish in the sky. 2 bats, 1 bug, and a soundtrack of clicks, chirps, and whispered chaos. Now we slip below ground, deep, deep down where no sunlight ever reaches. It's a place so hostile, so alien, most life wouldn't dare touch it. But in the silence of ancient rock, something is stirring, something eating electricity. Meet the electrotrophs, microbes that don't snack on sugars or fats, but consume pure electrons for energy. Yes, literal electrons, as in tiny subatomic particles, as in current. Mainstream microbiologists first discovered these bizarre organisms in deep-sea sediments, inside mines, and around hydrothermal vents. Environments where traditional food chains break down, where sunlight, photosynthesis, and even organic decay don't apply. And yet, life persists. Instead of munching carbon, these microbes anchor themselves to metal-rich surfaces, like iron or manganese, and pull electrons straight from the mineral matrix. Some do this through conductive appendages called nanowires, which act like little bioelectrical cables. Imagine a bacterium sticking out a microscopic extension cord and plugging itself into a rock. Scientists still argue how widespread these electrotrophs are. We've only just begun exploring the deep biosphere, and some researchers think we've barely scratched the surface. Others believe similar organisms might even survive on other planets, like Mars or Europa, where traditional energy sources are scarce. Because if life can run on current, suddenly it doesn't need light, or even heat, just a good rock and a spark. Here's your quirky tidbit. In lab conditions, scientists have rigged these microbes into biological batteries. That's right, living cells that generate electricity as they eat. It's early days, but the idea of plugging into bacteria-powered fuel cells isn't as far-fetched as it sounds. And get this, some of these microbes are capable of reverse electron flow, meaning not only can they eat electricity, they can generate it under the right conditions. We're talking about organisms that blur the line between biology and circuitry, which makes you wonder, how did something like this evolve? Well, Earth's crust contains massive reservoirs of minerals and trace electricity. These microbes may have developed their abilities millions, possibly billions, of years ago, long before plants or animals showed up. They are ancient, resilient, and astonishingly adaptable. And while they might not glow or growl or wave at you, they represent a completely different way to live. One that isn't based on light or motion, or even flesh. Just flow. Tiny currents, pulsing through stone and silence. Some researchers believe they play a major role in global geochemical cycles, regulating metals, balancing minerals, subtly shaping Earth's crust without anyone noticing. They're not flashy, they're not fast, but they are quietly running systems older than forests. So next time you flip a switch or charge your phone, think of the electrotrophs, down there in the bedrock, sipping electrons, completely unbothered by civilization. And maybe, in some quiet lab, one of their kind is powering a bulb right now, just for fun. Now step back in time, not years or centuries, but 500 million years. The Earth is barely recognizable. No birds, no mammals, just oceans and soft-bodied organisms crawling through primordial muck. But wait, there's something familiar here. A creature moving along the seabed, hard shell, blue blood, 10 legs. You've seen it before. It's the horseshoe crab. Still alive today, still kicking, still basically unchanged since long before the dinosaurs ever showed up. Welcome to one of Earth's most successful time travelers. Horseshoe crabs aren't actually crabs. They're more closely related to spiders and scorpions. They belong to a class called Merostomata, and they've been trudging through mudflats for nearly 500 million years. That's longer than trees have existed, longer than bones in most vertebrates. They are living fossils, a term reserved for species that appear almost identical to ancient relatives in the fossil record. And the horseshoe crab is the poster child. Mainstream paleontologists marvel at their stability. Most species adapt and evolve rapidly in response to environmental pressures. But the horseshoe crab seems to have found its winning formula early and stuck with it. If it ain't broke, don't fix the carapace. Their body is a three-part design: a rounded front shell, a central body with legs, and a long, spiky tail called a telson. It looks dangerous, but it's mostly used for righting themselves if they get flipped over, like a biological kickstand. But here's where it gets really wild. Horseshoe crabs have blue blood. Not metaphorically, literally. Their blood contains hemocyanin, which uses copper instead of iron to carry oxygen. Hence, the striking azure hue. And that blood? It's incredibly valuable to humans, because it contains a compound called limulus amebocyte lysate, LAL, which clots in the presence of bacterial toxins. It's so sensitive that it's used to test every batch of injectable medication, IV fluid, and surgical implant to ensure it's free of contamination. Without horseshoe crabs, modern medicine would have a much harder time staying safe. Here's your quirky tidbit. A single quart of their blood can be worth tens of thousands of dollars. And yes, they're harvested, gently bled in labs, then released back into the wild. But it's controversial. Some die in the process, and conservationists worry about their declining numbers. Scientists still argue whether synthetic alternatives to LAL will fully replace the need for horseshoe crab blood. Progress is being made, but for now, the ancient blue bloods remain part of our health system, and they're not just important for us. In spring, thousands of horseshoe crabs crawl onto beaches to spawn, laying millions of eggs in the sand. These eggs are a critical food source for migratory birds, especially the red knot, which times its entire journey to match the crab's egg-laying season. So from blue blood to bird migrations, the horseshoe crab touches ecosystems across the globe, all while wearing the same outfit it's had since before land animals existed. So next time you see one washed up on a beach, helmet-shaped, alien-eyed, motionless, don't dismiss it as sea debris. That's not just a creature, It's a survivor, a living relic, a quiet reminder that sometimes the oldest designs are still the best. Let's finish in the most familiar place of all, the human body. But tonight, even your own cells aren't what they seem. Imagine two children, same mother, same moment of birth. Only they're not twins. One of them is absorbed into the other, in the womb. Fast forward a few decades, and the surviving sibling takes a DNA test, only to find two sets of DNA inside their own body. Welcome to the mystery of the human chimera. Yes, it's real, and it doesn't involve lions, goats, or snakes stitched together. A chimera in biology is any organism with two or more sets of genetically distinct cells from different zygotes. In some cases, one individual absorbs their twin early in development. The result? One person, two genetic identities, intertwined forever. Mainstream genetics has confirmed dozens of such cases. Some were discovered when mothers gave birth to children that didn't seem to match their own DNA. Paternity tests failed. Blood work came back impossible. In one case, a woman had the DNA of her phantom twin in her uterus, but not in her blood. Her own child, genetically, was born from her twin. It's like finding a ghost in your genes. Scientists still argue how common this is. Some say it's rare. Others believe chimerism could be more widespread, hidden in places we're not testing. After all, we usually don't swab multiple tissues from the same person. You could be a chimera right now. You'd never know. Most cases cause no symptoms. But in rare instances, chimerism results in unusual pigmentation patterns, mismatched eye colors, or immune system quirks. Like when someone is their own bone marrow donor. And here's your quirky tidbit. One woman, after undergoing a DNA test for a kidney transplant, discovered her children weren't genetically related to her. Her ovaries carried her twin's DNA, not her own. She was technically the aunt of her children. Mic drop. Chimerism can also happen through bone marrow transplants. If you receive donor marrow, the DNA in your blood may no longer match the DNA in your hair, skin, or saliva. One man who had a transplant later found his semen carried only his donor's DNA. Two people in one body. Science fiction? Nope. Just Tuesday in immunology. And while natural chimeras are rare, scientists are experimenting with intentional versions, growing human cells inside animal embryos to study disease, create organs, or better understand development. It's controversial, but the science is moving fast. Still, the deeper idea lingers. What makes you, your thoughts, your memories, your DNA? What if you're not singular, but a mosaic of multiple identities layered quietly beneath the skin? What if we're all a little more complex than we appear? A little more mysterious? A little more borrowed? Because whether it's a jellyfish reversing time, a shark giving birth without a mate, or a human unknowingly carrying the remnants of a sibling, biology keeps reminding us, you are never just one thing. And now, drift gently away. Let your thoughts melt like caterpillars into chrysalis soup. Let your breath slow like a jellyfish resetting its life. You've wandered through ancient tides and glowing forests, brain-hacking wasps and tear-drinking butterflies. You felt the soft logic of plants, the punch of a shrimp, and the quiet hum of microbes feeding on lightning. Let it all dissolve now. The questions, the facts, the flickering wonder. There's nothing else to chase. Just rest now. Let your heartbeat slow and your thoughts slip beneath the surface. You've heard the strangest stories nature has to offer, and now you sleep.